damages and is, in fact, the most respectful to its historic fabric. Okay? All right, good. So with that, we can close the hearing.
Okay, Commissioners, the next item is item number 5. It's 315-325 West 85th Street, located within the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 1. It's docket number 166889, Block 1247, Lot 25. It's an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, an altered Renaissance Revival-style apartment building designed by Neville, and a colonial revival-style stable building designed by D&J Jardine and built in 1890-91, with a school annex addition designed by Jason Gold and built in 1996. Application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions and a barrier-free access ramp.
Maybe to the side or something. Yeah, I understand. Well, I was thinking, do you need 4 of these things? And the people are saying the same thing, so.
This is a proposal for Metropolitan Montessori School, which presently occupies this building and an annex, a modern annex on West 85th Street. The school has recently purchased the adjacent property, and the proposal is to do a rooftop addition and an expansion at the rear of the annex. Brenda Mizell, the head of school, is here to give an introduction, and I will introduce you.
I'm Brenda Mizell. I'm the head of school at Metropolitan Montessori School, and I'd like to thank you for considering our proposal to improve our school. We have lived on the Upper West Side for 50 years, starting at St. Michael's Church and moving in 1996 to 325 West 85th, where we took over the carriage house, remodeled it, and built an addition on the abandoned lot next door. The school has remained a preschool, ages 3 through 6th grade since its inception, and intends to remain that way. As our program got more expansive, more needs in modern education, science labs, music, art, science, all those things, we couldn't fit them in the building with the children anymore, and we were fortunate enough to be able to purchase the building next door. Our board at that time took a long, hard look about staying on the Upper West Side, purchasing that building, and who were we going to be. And they voted unanimously that we wanted to stay where we were, on the street we love, have the same number of children, the same grades, and not change a thing about our small school. We are an integral part of the community, and we feel very strongly about that. So when we went out to hire architects, we looked for someone who would respect both our needs as a Montessori school and the type of education we provide, and also have an appreciation for the neighborhood in which we are. So we hired Rogers Partners, and they did exactly that. They were able to join the 2 buildings with a design that gave us the space for 21st century education by putting a STEM lab or a science, technology, engineering, art, math kind of space on the roof, aligning with our current roof size, and enabling us to have very experiential and large project-based learning for all of the children in the school. In addition, we wanted to connect the spaces between the 3 buildings, and we wanted to create an open field that brought the outside in and the inside out, so that our children who live, as we all do in New York City, in vertical buildings closed in, would get sunlight and get the feel of what's outside. We wanted to keep our playground open for all of the children, so we created the addition to be above the low level, and lots of windows so that children could see out, children could see in. We were very pleased with that design. It allowed us to really expand the way we teach in our classrooms and in our halls, so that children understood the makeup of the building and what their environment around them was. In addition, we discovered we needed to improve our ADA accessibility. And when we looked to have that done, we looked at our front of our building, and we have 2 landmark, in our minds, landmark trees that identify our school, that are that been there long before any of us, and we didn't want to lose those trees. So as we asked the architects to design an entranceway that met ADA requirements, they found a way to do that without destroying the trees and allowing us to keep our security barrier, our wrought iron gate. So we were very pleased with the work they've done. I brought with me 8 letters of support from our community that I'm happy to hand over to you. We have been in the community and we appreciate our neighbors, and I think our neighbors appreciate us. And these letters attest to that. We hope to receive your approval as we are trying to align this process with our summer construction beginning June 15th, we hope. We have limited time. We have the 2 summers, and then we have during the school year where they can work in the building next door to us. And we're very anxious to have this done so that our children will benefit now and in the future. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rob Rogers from Rogers Partners, the architects for the project. We have a presentation that includes all the images that are in the package before you, but for brevity's sake, I'll try and hit all of the key points, and then we can, of course, refer to that package if you have specific questions. Are you? Does the keyboard work? I can use that. Use the keyboard. I wasn't planning to be this brief. It's okay. You got it? Okay, great, thanks so much. As Brenda pointed out, the school has existed since '96 on the 2 buildings that are commonly called 325, and the acquisition of the adjacent building, 315, allows the school to substantially expand the quality of its program. So you have here the sort of the views from the street, and from behind to understand just in an overview what adding this particular building. The middle one is set back, you see, with a new building. We've added this one with the purchase, and we're looking at a rooftop addition and adding in the rear yard space of what was a new building in '96. Here they are in plan. This was the building in '96, and we're connecting into here. Take note of a couple things, including the extension in the rear yard as we move along. We'll go quickly through historic images of 315 and when the building existed at 325. When the school was originally located, the site was empty, and that's where they built the new school. So the core elements, the stair, the elevator, things like that are in that center piece, which means as we've been able to expand into the adjacent building, it's a very rich and programmed low infrastructure expansion for the school. And you can see the rear yards. This is the school's acquisition property. Moving through. It's surrounded by a lot of much more substantial and taller construction. And so the addition on the original center building is here, really isolated from the rest of that back neighborhood by the extension of 315. And then we're looking to add a story on top here, adjacent to that, and equal to the elevation of the building that was part of the '96 new building, to create additional programmatic space on top. Diagrammatic illustration of those 3 buildings, and then with the addition on top and to the rear. And here's the rear yard as it exists today. We've got a play yard on top of the historic building, core and program elements in the '96 building with a playground, and then adding additional space onto that center building, increasing our ability to circulate between the 2 buildings on either side and add program. And then the addition is really this portion, taking what has been one small art classroom and expanding it now programmatically into 2 large classrooms that allow the programmatic affiliation of the arts and sciences that Brenda made reference. So in plan, and I'm going to come back in large scale to deal with the issue of the front yard she mentioned, and the 2 extraordinarily iconic London planes that live just outside the front door. But here you can see we are actually adding the space in the rear, but starting at the 2nd floor. We're leaving the playground open all the way underneath. Given the dimensions and constraints of that rear yard with the children, we really felt every 8-10 feet of running distance actually counted. So the addition starts at the 2nd floor and goes up. You see here? And then when we get to the top of the building, that addition also allows us to come across and build this much new space on the 315. And these are the basic elevations located in the space. I'm happy to come back to these. This is the elevation looking from the neighbor at 311 across of what is existent now. This is the 96 building, and we're adding in basically within that same visual parameter the addition of that new programmatic space on top of 315. The rear yard setback, as I mentioned, cantilevered over the playground, keeping that dimension in space. Also leaving Brenda's office window here with perfect view sight into all behaviors in the backyard. Sightlines from the street. The addition on 315. And just to touch on the original historic building at 315, before it was kind of stripped down over the ages, had a mansard expression at the upper level. And so as we put our addition, which is right here behind, we actually looked at a subtle recall of the materiality of that mansard expression with the standing seam roof that will give us a little bit of that measure of the verticality that was there. The material you won't see from the street, but in the rear yard, on that rear elevation, is actually a cement fiberboard. We've got it here. It's used in a single color, but in 3 textures, so it's got a variegated pattern as it sits on there. And then that rear extension has got combination wood and aluminum curtain wall that, given the quality of the interior spaces, the character of the education, we actually have a wood expression to the inside of the building with the weathering aluminum and glass to the outside. Brenda had mentioned we have a challenge at the front yard because the elevational change from where the school is entered at the setback to the property line and the legal is actually quite steep. It's almost like a 14% grade. And to meet accessibility requirements as we change the use of the adjacent building, bring all of the buildings into compliance, we've looked at an alternative entry sequence that locates a ramp here in front of the 315 building. We've got just enough space to work within that doorway, although we're not using it as legal egress. Right now you enter between the 2 plane trees. We can't really go on the original 320, the original building side over here because it's blocked by the tree, and we've got development there. So we're going to relocate the planter to combine the 2 plane trees, allow the ramp to parallel the 315 with the step up into now what would be a very modestly sloped front yard into the front of the building. These are photographs of that condition here from the east side. And really, we're struggling with the classic narrow sidewalk, both delightful street trees, but also the stoops and gardens along the street. So there's really no other place to come out and deal with those grade changes. We also erected the mock-up, and I'll go through these very quickly. Just so you can see, we're actually set back from the street, and at the scale that challenges even me to find the addition at times. as we look up from the street. And we would certainly invite your questions.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Are there any questions right now? Okay, good. We'll take testimony. Sean Corsandi.
Good afternoon, Chair Srinivasan, Commissioners. This is Sean Corsandi for Landmark West. The Metropolitan Montessori School's proposal includes several significant changes to the existing buildings on this historic block. The combined rooftop and rear yard additions would add considerable bulk, and the barrier-free access ramp would impact the building's sidewalk presence. Our committee finds that in many respects, these elements are handled appropriately, although we have some questions that prevent us from recommending full approval at this time. The committee finds the proposed massing of the proposed rooftop and rear yard additions to be appropriate. Though large, these additions are minimally visible from the street and do not affect significant architectural features on the backs of these buildings, including footprint of the donut. Our committee does have concerns about materials. The architects have been thorough, and they have noted that there are 3 distinct buildings with 3 different material palettes. The new additions should create harmony among the 3. Instead, the design introduces a 4th and 5th family of materials, including precast concrete siding and aluminum. Also, while Landmark West respects the need for accessible entry and finds the location and design of proposed ramp to be appropriate, we question the continued inclusion but alteration of an imposingly tall, unwelcoming, penitentiary-like cage fence enclosure. This does not come across as a gesture of good faith from an institution that prides itself on openness and being community-oriented. Speaking of good faith, our committee would like to suggest that the school consider restoring lost elements of the 315 West 85th Street facade, including new windows that reflect the original ornate Muntin patterns, the 5th floor mock mansard, the 4th floor cornice, the 2nd story balconette, the original 1st floor entry and window arrangement, the original 1st floor masonry entry surround, or any of the other decorative details visible in the 1940s tax photo, while also removing the applied paint. In conclusion, it is the understanding of our committee, per the school's thorough and articulate presentation to us on February 10th, that this facility enlargement does not correspond to planned growth in student body. Landmark West is mindful of other instances of institutional creep in which piecemeal expansion over time has resulted in significant cumulative change. If the school were to contemplate further physical growth, Landmark West would expect to see a master plan and have the opportunity to testify on how that plan would impact the historic district. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there other speakers on this item? All right, Community Board 7 submitted their resolution. They approved the 5-story rear addition and 1-story rooftop addition, but have a few recommendations. They ask for more refined metal cladding for the rooftop addition and should be similar to the original standing seam. They have comments on the fence and gate should be made as open and light as possible. Any modifications to the street level door should be reversible, and strongly recommend a master plan for facade restoration. All right. Would you like to respond to some of the comments that we just heard? Yes.
Well, I can say we're not going to ever expand. We won't be able to afford to expand after this project. So that part is for certain. We are who we are, and we will always be who we are in that small size as a small community school. That I can ascertain to that. The architectural elements I will leave to my esteemed colleagues here.
Let me try in a couple of different order of the different ones, but one is showing my notes. One is the subject of the materiality.
Yes.
I thought we'll address that. We've proposed the fiber cement board, which we think is actually both representative of what the essentially 1996 is a new building, but we're adding to that. And since we're adding that and we're over the playground, we're trying to keep the loading light, which suggests both in its nature as cantilevered out and its fact of being over, that it's not really a masonry solution. And so we think that this is appropriate in the context of the masonry. It's bound within the building extensions on either side. And we actually think that the warm nature of the material and the color and the texture is appropriate to that as a school building, that is now a 2015 building. The standing seam is really a simple metal enclosure. Of course, we've got fire rating at one of the party walls, and so we wanted to erect that around really in recognition of that one-time mansard expression on the front of the building. As to the full historical restoration of 315, the school has asked us to look at long-term facade work on 315. We may well be back to you this fall with some plans about that, but it currently is not technically required to serve the programmatic needs of the school, and we've been frankly really struggling to get the program resolved within the time frame and budget that the school has presented to us. So I think we're deeply appreciative of the desire to deal with the frontage of 315, and I think that's in the long-term plan of the school. We look forward to coming back to you with that.
Can I add one thing? We did actually, we have.
Yes, can you come forward and speak? Yes.
Hi, I'm Betsy Stoll. I'm also with Rogers Partners. After we met with CD7, we did actually modify the metal siding of the addition. We had a different proposal, and after our conversation with them about the character of that material, we moved to the standing seam. So that came out of their recommendation.
Okay. And there was, I think, one other comment about the fence or the enclosure, which is...
Yeah,
Yes.
we're the front yard is a
front yard.
challenge, but
Mhm.
we feel like we do need to meet the letter of the law. And the fence is there as a security matter for the school, during and after hours. So that's the nature of the fence, which is there now, and it's simply really being adjusted in its location to accommodate the ADA access.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, we can move to discussion. I think that their proposal is very modest. I think it's very much in keeping with sort of the fact that these are three separate buildings and they have their own vocabulary, and they've chosen to address that where they've put the bulk of the building. And it also includes a modern building. So I think that in general, the whole approach in terms of design, and if it actually gets them their programmatic need, works very well. Yes, Fred.
I want to say I think they've broken a record for modesty in a school
She's just so modest.
expanding in any part of the city, but particularly the Upper West Side, where usually the entire audience is filled with neighbors coming to protest. So I also hope that you're, with this very modest addition and handsome addition and smart addition, are able to resolve all the program needs that you might have. So I think I support everything just the way it's been presented.
All right, other comments? Any concerns? Okay, good. So we can close the hearing then. And Michael, would you like to read that?
May I ask one question
Yes.
before I do this?
Sure.
To our resident arborist. How many more years for those two plane trees?
100.
I'm a little worried about them. All right, thank you. In the matter of 315, 325 West 85th Street, in the Riverside West End Historic District, Extension 1, an application to construct rooftop and rear yard additions and a barrier-free access ramp, noting that 315, 325 West 85th Street is a complex of three buildings combined on the interior to serve as a school, and that the style, scale, materials, and details of the buildings are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the historic district. I recommend approval, finding that the rear of the buildings have no significant architectural features that would be lost or damaged by the construction of the proposed rear yard addition, that the rear yard addition will not be visible from the public thoroughfare, that the rear yard addition will be limited to the 1996 school annex and will not obscure or destroy any significant features of the complex, That the proposed facade of the rear yard addition will utilize materials that will harmonize with the modern materials palette of the existing annex addition and features reveals at the party walls that will create a visual separation between the adjacent historic buildings at the rear. That the block features larger tenement and apartment buildings, and the size of the proposed rear addition will be in keeping with the varied character of this block. That the rooftop addition will not be seen directly over the front facade of 315 West 85th Street, will be significantly set back from the front facade, and although visible over the secondary facade from the west, it will not detract from the roofscape of the complex. That the standing seam metal cladding of the rooftop addition will be consistent with materials traditionally found on rooftop accretions and will not call attention to itself. That the cumulative amount of added bulk of the rooftop and rear yard additions will not overwhelm the buildings. That the proposed areaway and ramp will replace an existing uneven and sloped surface and provide barrier-free access to in the least obtrusive manner possible. That the proposed concrete areaway and ramp tinted to match the bluestone will blend in with the existing bluestone sidewalk, and that the simple black metal handrail at the ramp will harmonize with the existing design of the metal work at the areaway. That the proposed design alterations to the wood slat planters and metal fence at the areaway will maintain the existing design aesthetic while accommodating a new barrier-free access ramp, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the buildings or the historic district.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this application's been approved.